right, continuing on page 15. So with that rectangle area formula, it does work for squares also. It's just that your length and width happen to be the same. So sometimes they will write it as side and side and say the area is the side squared. But, I mean, it really is the same. You don't need to memorize two different formulas. Not a big deal. Just remember area is length times width, and that will get you through for squares and rectangles. All right, so some examples of looking at dividing by zero. So a reminder that dividing by zero is undefined. Sometimes it takes a little bit to get the hang of when is it dividing by zero instead of zero being divided by something else. So this can be very helpful if you say it out loud. So 0 divided by 8. So that's okay. That is all right, and that's just going to be 0. This one is 8 divided by 0, and this one is going to be undefined. Cannot divide by 0. And this, when we're saying this one out loud, we would say 4 divided by 0. So this one would also be the undefined situation. And the last one, 0 divided by 3, that would just be 0. All right, pause for a second while I switch pages. All right, I flipped over and I'm actually on the bottom of page 16. So go to the bottom half of 16 and then we'll hit the top half in a moment. So this is rewriting those using that particular property. So we just did this with addition. So we're going to do this with multiplication for the commutative property and the associative property. And then we'll look at the distributive property. So rewriting this with commutative property, so that means we're going to have to switch the order. So it's going to become 8 times 14. That would be using the commutative property, the idea that we can switch the order of the numbers. Associative property, remember we're going to keep the numbers in the same order, but instead of grouping the last two together, we're going to group the first two together. So I'll do the 6 times 2 in parentheses, and then times 10 there. Now, this one, you wouldn't have to put this one there because the parentheses would be implying the multiplication, but it just makes it a little clearer in this situation where we're talking about the properties. And distributive property. So you're going to take whatever is on the outside and multiply that through. So the other side of the equation, when I use the distributive property, would be 5 times 7 plus 5 times 4. And that, from with the parentheses to without the parentheses, that's the distributive property. Anything else we do to this is nice to simplify for a final answer, but this is all you need to do to demonstrate that the distributive property is being used. All right, I am going to pause this for a second, move up to the top of the page. All right, so we're at the top of page 16 now, and I am going to put some little blanks in here for you to match the property with each of these. So I've got the property names on the right here. So we have A through E, and you'll notice we've got 6 blanks. So one of those is going to get used a second time. And we've looked now at some examples with each of these, with the commutative property of multiplication, the associative property of multiplication, the multiplication property of 0, the multiplication property of 1, and the distributive property of multiplication over addition. So I am going to pause this, and then I will fill in, and you guys have a chance to take a moment and decide what you think goes where, and then you can compare answers with mine. Just a moment. All right, so last bit on these, just identifying which property goes with which. All right, so we've got an 8 times 1. So as soon as I see that, I'm going to be looking at the multiplication property of 1. So the first answer is going to be D. The next one, I'm multiplying two things, but their order has switched. So that is going to be the commutative property. They moved, they commuted. The third one has parentheses, but there's addition in there and multiplication on the outside. And that's your big giveaway, that it is the distributive property of multiplication over addition as opposed to the associative property. Because the associative property is going to be all multiplication, while this one, the distributive property, has to have both multiplication and addition. So that will be E. The next one is going to be associative. Notice that the numbers are in the same order, but we have moved the groupings. So the association here is 3 and 2. Here it's 5 and 3. So that is B. Next last one here, 0 times 4 equals 0. That's going to be that multiplication property of 0. Also, you might see as the 0 factor law. And then the last one, 7 times 14 equals 14 times 7. So remember that those parentheses mean multiplication. So this is another way that I can write the commutative property. So that is going to be A for that. All right, that should get us caught up for Monday. So hopefully that will take care of everything. If you have any other questions, just let me know. Thank you.